For centuries, there was a tree that asked for almost nothing and gave almost everything. A tree that fed families when crops failed. A tree that healed bodies weakened by hunger and disease. A tree that could turn polluted water into something drinkable. It grew quietly across Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. Not in laboratories, not in factories, but in backyards, village edges, dusty roadsides, and semi-arid land where most plants struggled to survive. And yet, despite everything it could do, this tree was never crowned a miracle of modern science. It was never backed by billion-dollar research programs. It was never industrialized at scale. It was simply ignored. Not because it was ineffective, but because it worked too well without permission. This tree is moringa. In traditional cultures, moringa was not called a superfood. It was simply called food, medicine, insurance against famine, a tree you planted for your children and your children's children. Its leaves were eaten fresh or dried into powder. Its pods were cooked like vegetables. Its seeds were pressed for oil. Its bark and roots were used cautiously in medicine. Its seeds were even crushed to purify dirty water. Few plants on Earth have ever offered such range from a single trunk. Long before nutrition science existed, people noticed something undeniable. Communities that regularly consumed moringa suffered less from malnutrition. Children grew stronger, mothers recovered faster after childbirth. Elders maintained strength deep into old age. When colonial doctors first encountered populations that ate moringa, they were puzzled. These were communities with limited access to meat, supplements, or pharmaceuticals, yet showing fewer signs of nutrient deficiency than expected. The explanation was growing in their yards. Moringa leaves contain complete protein, all 9 essential amino acids. That alone is rare for a plant, but it does not stop there. The leaves are rich in calcium, potassium, iron, magnesium, vitamin A, vitamin C, and antioxidants. Gram for gram, dried moringa leaves outperform spinach, milk, oranges, and bananas combined. But moringa was never just about nutrients, it was about resilience. This tree thrives in drought. It grows fast. It tolerates poor soil. It can be harvested repeatedly without killing it. You can cut it down to a stump, and it comes back stronger. In regions facing food insecurity, that matters more than yield charts or export value. It means survival without dependency. And then there is water. For thousands of years, communities crushed moringa seeds and stirred them into dirty water. Within hours, particles clumped together and sank. Bacteria levels dropped dramatically. The water became clearer, safer to drink. Modern testing would later confirm what villagers already knew. Moringa seeds contain natural coagulants and antimicrobial compounds capable of removing pathogens and heavy particles from water. A tree that feeds you, heals you, and cleans your water. So why isn't it everywhere? Why is moringa not lining supermarket shelves the way soy, corn, or wheat does? Why is it absent from large-scale Western agricultural investment? Why is it treated as a developing world plant rather than a global solution? The answer has little to do with science and everything to do with systems. Moringa does not require fertilizer companies. It does not require pesticide regimes. It does not require patented seeds. It does not require yearly replanting. You plant it once, and it keeps giving. That alone places it outside the logic of modern industrial agriculture. In the West, agricultural funding flows toward crops that integrate easily into existing supply chains, crops that can be mechanized, standardized, patented, and sold back to farmers every season. Moringa resists all of that. Its leaves must be harvested by hand. Its value lies in freshness and local use. Its seeds cannot be locked behind intellectual property. There is no clear way to monopolize a tree that grows happily in poor soil and gives away its benefits freely. So research funding remained minimal. Clinical trials were limited, investment stayed cautious, not because moringa lacked promise, but because it lacked profitability. Instead, the benefits of moringa were broken apart, isolated, and sold elsewhere. They became calcium supplements, iron tablets, protein powders, and water purification chemicals. Each addressed a single problem, while moringa already addressed them holistically. This pattern repeated again and again. When a natural solution solves too many problems at once, it threatens too many industries. So it gets labeled traditional, alternative, local knowledge. Words that sound respectful, but function as a dismissal. Meanwhile, malnutrition continued. Water scarcity worsened, chronic disease spread, and moringa kept growing quietly, ignored by the systems that claimed to be searching for solutions. By the late 20th century, a few researchers began to look closer, not because of funding pressure, but because the evidence was impossible to ignore. They measured blood markers in populations that consume moringa regularly. They analyzed its antioxidant activity. They tested its antimicrobial effects. They confirmed its water-purifying properties. Again and again, the results were clear. Moringa worked, but working was not enough. Without large pharmaceutical interest, moringa studies stayed small. Without agribusiness lobbying, it never became a policy priority. Without industrial scalability, it remained categorized as a supplement rather than a staple. And yet, as climate change accelerates, the cracks in the system widen. Droughts intensify, soils degrade, supply chains fracture, water sources become unsafe. The solutions modernity invested in begin to fail under stress. And suddenly, a fast-growing, drought-tolerant tree that feeds people, strengthens immunity, and purifies water no longer sounds primitive. It sounds essential, which raises an uncomfortable question. If this tree has always existed, if its benefits were always visible, if its impact was always measurable, why was it left behind? Because moringa does not fit a world built on scarcity. It represents abundance without control, health without prescription, security without dependency, and that makes it inconvenient. The first part of moringa's story is not about discovery, it is about neglect, about a solution so simple, so complete, that it was easier to ignore than to integrate. But the story does not end there, because the pressures shaping the future, climate instability, nutritional collapse, water insecurity, are the same pressures moringa has always been designed to survive. And that brings us to the second half of the story, the part where the forgotten tree begins to matter again. As the modern world begins to strain under the weight of its own systems, the questions it avoided are returning with urgency. How do you feed people when soils are depleted? How do you maintain nutrition when supply chains fracture? How do you provide clean water when infrastructure fails? These are not theoretical questions anymore. They are already reality in many parts of the world. And quietly, in these same places, moringa has never stopped being used. In regions of Africa facing prolonged drought, moringa leaves are dried and added to meals to prevent nutrient deficiency. In parts of India, it remains a daily food, not a supplement. In disaster-prone areas, NGOs that actually work on the ground, not in boardrooms, have begun planting moringa as a resilience strategy. Because the tree does not wait for stability, it grows in chaos. Moringa's root system stabilizes soil, its canopy provides shade. Its leaves can be harvested within weeks of planting. Even when cut repeatedly, it regrows rapidly, converting sunlight into nutrition with remarkable efficiency. Unlike monocrops, it does not collapse under stress. It adapts, and perhaps most importantly, it does not centralize power. A family with a moringa tree does not need to rely on imported supplements. A village with moringa does not need constant fertilizer shipments. Clean water does not require expensive filtration systems when seeds can be used locally. This decentralization is precisely why moringa was never embraced at scale. Modern systems favor centralized solutions. Centralized production, centralized control. Moringa distributes power back to the individual, which is why, when Western researchers finally did begin to promote it, the language was careful. It was framed as supportive, complementary, not a replacement, as if acknowledging its full potential would destabilize something larger. But reality has a way of ignoring framing. As food prices rise and health outcomes worsen, people are rediscovering what was always available. They are not doing it through headlines or institutions, but through necessity. Community gardens plant moringa alongside vegetables. Aid workers favor it in regions where nothing else survives. Researchers interested in regeneration rather than extraction return to it again and again. And the results remain consistent. Children consuming moringa show improved growth markers. Adults show better nutrient profiles. Communities using moringa seed powder reduce waterborne illness. The tree does not solve everything. No single plant can. But it solves enough to matter. And that is the point. The reason moringa was ignored was never because it lacked evidence. It was because it disrupted too many narratives at once. That food must be industrial, that medicine must be pharmaceutical, that water must be processed through centralized infrastructure. Moringa quietly contradicts all three. It suggests that some solutions are biological, not technological. That resilience can be grown, not engineered. That healing does not always require invention, sometimes it requires remembrance. This does not mean abandoning modern science, it means expanding it. Integrating ancient solutions with contemporary understanding rather than dismissing them. The tragedy is not that moringa was forgotten. The tragedy is that it was dismissed at the exact moment the world needed it most. But trees operate on different timelines than institutions. They do not rush, they do not lobby, they do not advertise, they wait. Moringa has waited through centuries of neglect, through colonial restructuring, through industrial monoculture, through global indifference, and it is still here, still growing in poor soil, still feeding those who know it, still purifying water where infrastructure never reached. The future of food, health, and water security may not depend on inventing something new. It may depend on whether we are willing to see what was always there. The forgotten tree does not ask to be crowned a miracle, it only asks to be planted. And in a world searching desperately for sustainable answers, that quiet request may be the most radical solution of all.